So my name is Andrew. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I've had plenty of opportunities to support clients, both with SIEM transition. I've also had the privilege of leading a security operations center for the Army for about 9 years to start my career. So I've seen the transition from technology to technology and evolution of security operations centers. So excited to talk to you today and joined with my esteemed panelists, Mike and Anthony. Anthony, you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Polzing. I work at Palo Alto Networks. I am the global solution architect lead, principal lead, and I also help with the technical business development of how we align our products into the Deloitte frameworks. My background, I've kind of wore a lot of hats through the security realm. 20 years in, I've done pen testing, vulnerability assessment. I've built security operations centers from the ground up, helped staff them, I played every role in the security operations center. So I'm happy to be up here and with my esteemed colleagues as well.
Thanks, Anthony. My name is Mike Most. I'm a solutions architect on the Deloitte Palo Alto Alliance. My expertise is all things Palo Alto, so that ranges from firewalls to SOC operations to automation and AI, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. From a background perspective, I've been in IT and cyber operations for about 15 years. I've been in the apparel industry, biotech industry, consulting as well, and here I am back at consulting today. We're going to talk a lot about SOC operations, SIEM transformation, really cool stuff. It makes me really excited to talk about how automation has created additional efficiencies in the SOC and really what the future is looking towards right now. So I'm going to kick it back to Andrew.
All right, cool. Thanks for the intro. So, with as much experience as up on the stage, I'd say, what's different now? This topic of modernization and SOC transformation seems to percolate every couple of years. I guess, what is it, what's your perspective of what that means today and how is it different than some of the cycles of technology waves that we've seen in the past for this topic?
Well, the way I look at it, I think us as Palo Alto Networks, where we see it as we've come to a pivotal point where all these things have actually happened. We see that we have, back to your point, we have all these disparate tools, right? And from an organization standpoint, we need a consolidation. We need a way that it's not putting our resources, constraining our resources to have to know multiple different things. We need to have it at a one pivot place where I can leverage my resources and be able to move faster. So, I think everything that's come up to this point in time is beneficial for us to get here, but we finally brought it all together to be able to say, hey, we can have that one pane of glass. We can actually centralize how you're doing this as an organization so you can have speed forward.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because I think that the key word here is the paradigm shift, that we've gone from best of breed solutions to sort of the platformization, as Palo calls it, of a consolidated tool set. So from a cyber operations lens, we have different components like EDR for your endpoint solution. You have ASM for attack surface management, SIEM for your centralized SIEM and analytics, and then even the analytics engine that wraps over the SIEM for some of the automations and efficiencies that we'll get into a little bit later. That is now a consolidated approach where it does make it a lot easier for our practitioners to be able to have a single pane of glass and, more importantly, hire for the right skill sets for a single solution as opposed to multiple different tool sets at the expert or medium levels to be able to account for each of those point solutions. So again, we've transitioned into kind of a new age of consolidated and platform approaches.
Yeah, I think platformization as a term is obviously something that Kash is very bullish about. We've heard it even this morning and throughout the week. What's interesting is when we look back a few years ago, there was no single platform that could do an attack surface management, threat intel, EDR, SIEM, SOAR. And so we took an approach of looking in the market and leveraging our alliance partners to build a best of breed platform for managed security operations, right? And so as we pivot into kind of where the market is heading now and looking at, vendors like Palo that have really kind of taken those disparate pieces of security operations that drive different capabilities in pockets and really bring it into one kind of cohesive platform. I guess question to you is, historically in security operations, the SIEM has always been kind of the centerpiece of the SOC, right? It's the, as you mentioned, single pane of glass. It's the the piece that pulls in the telemetry from all the disparate pieces. Do you still see that as kind of the centerpiece of security operations? And if so, what's driving the change within the SIEM itself?
So I do still see it as a center point, and I think it's molded though, right? So we're seeing this new transformation as AI comes in. You're seeing more data having to be centered into it. So even business data, like you need to have a holistic visibility viewpoint of the organization as a whole, so I can correlate back anything that I'm seeing as anomalous across the whole environment. I think that being able to have a platform that can be able to identify IoT threats, be able to identify things across the supply chain, and even just into incidents at the endpoint, being able to see those all in one place, and actually having a layer of an AI layer to be able to say, okay, my data models are seeing this is a risk and it's aligning to my data classification. I'm able to bring all those under one paradigm. And it's a shift, right? It's a shift that we haven't seen before, and what the market is moving towards. So again, back to answer your question, yes, it is a pivotal piece for an organization still to this day.
And I'm going to add on to that. So yes, the SIEM, I think, in my opinion, is going to be that central nexus where everything integrates together. Yep. But what's going to be more important, especially with the next generation SOC, is going to be that analytics engine that allows us to, at scale, have all of these different integrations, as you mentioned, yep, and as some of the other talks mentioned, across different domains. That could be identity, that could be network, that could be IoT, OT, et cetera, into a single, I would say, analytics engine that allows us to map and parse that data without much manual process or user intervention. And that really is that magic pill, right? Where you have the ability to say, click a button, enter an API, integrate that data source, and then bam, all of your data is there already. All the data that's going to be used from a security lens, a security perspective, is now in your SIEM.
Yeah, so I agree with you guys, right? As the SIEM is the centerpiece of the SOC. From a transition perspective, can you talk a little bit, Mike, about what we're doing specifically to help ease the pain, ease the burden on migrating from one platform to another?
Exactly right. I think that the next generation SIEM transition or SOC transition is very difficult because you have all of these different point solutions. You're essentially saying, let's go ahead, consolidate into a single platform. Where do I even start? And I think to your point is that here at Deloitte, we have accelerators that can allow us to integrate into a single platform solution much faster and at a faster scale, a faster pace, using both technical accelerators and things like our project management point of view to be able to understand how a consolidated next generation SOC should look like. Now, from a technical perspective, we all know that parsing exists, right, in your modern day SIEM. And we all know that the need to parse and map your data sources accordingly is extremely important, right? From a security perspective, from an efficiency perspective, we can help with that. We have programs that allows us to go from, let's say, SPL, certain other SIEM out there, to XQL, which is going to be the XSIAM common language at scale. So we just put this through an assessment, it spits out the query language, and then boom, you're up and running. So we have accelerators like that can really reduce that time to operations and can make it a lot easier for your SOC practitioners to be able to get up and running and start looking at alerts the next day almost. Yeah, really fascinating stuff that we've been doing.
Yeah, so that takes care of the parsing issue, right? So I have data sources that are either customized for my current SIEM or natively supported that maybe are not natively supported by an XIM. Mm-hmm. And so that translation of the parsing language to be able to support basically any data source is really important from an ingest perspective. One of the other things that clients are often focused on is the use cases and the content and the filters and the rules and queries that they've built over time within their environment, especially in heavy regulated environments. Clients like banks have to show to their auditors that in the transition from one platform to the next, they're not losing anything from a detection standpoint. So if these are the use cases and the threat detections that I was focused on before, if I move to a new platform, show me with evidence that you were able to take that logic and move it into the new platform. And, if you're going to run a test, that it would fire an alert in both platforms. So how are we dealing with the content piece of it?
I think it really is a holistic approach here, where we're looking at all your different data sources, whether it's a homegrown data source, whether it's something like a SaaS solution, identity solution, et cetera, and we're prioritizing them, right? We're looking at custom data sources. What is it going to look like when we integrate that into a next generation SOC solution or SIEM solution? What's going to be the level of effort to be able to do so? And how do we leverage our technical accelerators to be able to get those log sources into SIEM at scale? So we evaluate all the log sources, we prioritize, we do an initial assessment for the most part to be able to determine, okay, these log sources are needed, they're relevant, and maybe these aren't, right? So it's going to be that holistic approach to understanding what data is needed and which data is not needed.
Yeah. Another point of contention that I often see is, so there's a lot of hesitation with regards to, moving from one platform to the next and now being locked into a single vendor solution. 5 years down the road, a new solution is going to come out and then we're going to have to ride the wave again. And so maybe, Anthony, if you could touch upon, how you deal with that question with regards to not being locked into a single vendor platform going forward, and some of the aspects around, data broker and things like that you guys are supporting now with the XSIAM platform.
Absolutely. So, of course, in our perfect world, we want everybody into our platform, but we know organizations don't typically work that way in most cases. There's a journey to get there, right? So we play well in with all vendors, right? I think we have over 700 integrations with different vendors. So from a perspective, if you have a CrowdStrike or you have any of these other tools, we play well. So XSIAM can actually adjust to those type of areas. Now, back to your point of data integration and how you bring the data in. We just released I had a press release, and Deloitte was called out on this as well, with Cribble, right? And so Cribble's able to allow ingestion of data, and you can actually chop and put in what data from different buckets and different areas at any pathway that you want, or at any time frame that you want, and how it comes in, and be able to get the analytics from XSIAM as well, from a native integration. So it literally, we're very flexible when it comes to that manner. I mean, in a perfect world, we want everything, right? I'm not gonna sugarcoat that, but we can play well no matter what's there. And we can provide the AI overlay into that as well. We still get the same capabilities. So I think from your point, vendor lock-in, some people are worried about it, but I think what you get from an full XSIAM perspective is that I'm able to scale, I'm able to get from a operation standpoint, if I'm managing 10 different tools, being able to kind of showcase the time savings. I don't have to go scale, I don't have to patch this other tool and then 3 other tools as well. There's somebody has to do every one of those jobs, and it's a different person for each one of those tools. Most of the time, it's not the same person. So now I'm able to kind of consolidate from that perspective. So being able to showcase the journey, because it's not turn it on and all of a sudden it works. This is why we work well together. It's being able to show the journey and say, hey, this is the pathway we're going to go on, and this is how we're going to get there.
Yeah, and I think that's so important that, Cribble, for example, I think the majority of my clients have Cribble in some capacity. And to tell my clients like, hey, you're not gonna be able to use Cribble as your log streaming service would be a non-starter for a lot of folks out there. So the ability for the next generation SOC to incorporate different third-party tool sets into the fold of the SIEM is extremely important. So I can say with confidence that no, you don't have to necessarily decouple yourself from your existing solutions, that there can be some synergies between your existing, say again, Cribble solution, your log streaming solution, with this next generation SOC platform. So again, very reassuring to hear that there's strides and there's an effort made to have these third-party integrations work practically out of the box.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think the data broker in the middle is really important to be able to alleviate the anxiety over vendor lock-in and be able to also direct the traffic into one or more platforms for analytics and threat detection. And so I think, that now that Cribble is natively supported with the XSIAM platform as well as others, I think that's a really, really powerful message to the market, that you're listening to your clients and understanding kind of their pain points and working to solve them.
And just to add, you brought up a good point. With Cribble, you are able to push it to multiple areas. If you had a Splunk or you have XIAM, you could forward the same data to multiple different points from that single point. So it works very well.
Yeah.
We've seen it. I mean, we've worked together in a couple of different areas where we've seen it work very well.
Yeah. It's also a good way to kind of evaluate different vendor technologies, right? If you're able to use a data broker in the middle and pass it into multiple technologies during a bake-off or something like that to actually see what actually fires and how the models and threat detection works. So
Absolutely.
That's a pretty powerful capability. The other point of contention that I often hear is, a lot of large sophisticated clients are still reluctant to adopt SaaS technology, given the sensitivity of the data that's actually collected in a SIEM. Historically, some of these organizations have had, large data center deployed appliances where they would, backhaul all their traffic, all the alerts, and they would house them in the data center, right? As we're seeing the proliferation of XIM and other next generation SIEM technologies, most of them are SaaS only. There is no on-premise option. And so I'm sure you face this in some of your client discussions with regards to the reluctance on moving to SaaS. In fact, a very notable CISO put out a message today or this week during RSA on the risks of adopting SaaS technology. And so how do you address that head on with your clients that are reluctant to move into a SaaS technology for something as sensitive as, a SIEM SOC?
So there's a couple different pathways, right? But I do think holistically, right? There is a reluctancy, but where we kind of come and showcase is that from a SaaS perspective, now we're able to pull things directly into XIM. You don't have to kind of funnel the data into your on-prem where there's maybe a syslog server or some type of server you're housing these things on. You got to maintain that. We're able to kind of create a path where it's least resistance. We're able to unlimitedly scale. I mean, our backend, our backend sits on GCP, so we're able to kind of scale at an unlimited process.
You are the largest or second largest consumer.
We're the second largest consumer of GCP, right? So from that perspective, let's walk through the process, right? If I have an on-prem SIEM and I'm starting to run out of storage, right? I'm starting to run out. I have to go put in a change request. I got to go through the change board to say I need to do these things. From a SaaS solution, we can kind of change that instantly. Actually, you don't even see it. You don't even know it's happening. You just business as usual. There's no changes that have to happen in that perspective. If I have on-prem infrastructure, there's a lot of pieces that have to move from an infrastructure standpoint to enable that. And I have to go procure more stuff. I mean, it's a pathway, right? And so that could take a month. It could take, who knows how long it could take. And it's not an instant situation. We're giving you agility and speed because the bad guys, they're not sitting there and saying, well, we're going to wait till they go get this procurement and then we're going to attack after that. They're not waiting. Yeah. So I think what you get from a SaaS type of solution is you're getting agility that you could never get from an on-prem solution.
Yeah. Yeah, and I come from a network engineering background, right? And hearing the ask to have all my SaaS applications somehow have to route back to my on-premise environment can cause a significant headache, right? To be able to do that. I do agree that having the data living closest to the SIEM solution, the SOC solution, is going to be the easiest path, right?
Absolutely.
But also, when you have an on-premises environment, the onus falls on you to maintain the patching, the availability, and the overall operations and reliability of that software or of that infrastructure. So when you go with the full SaaS solution, with all the benefits of scalability and uptime, resiliency, et cetera, you are no longer having to figure out your own site's reliability internally. You're now pushing that over to the vendor, and you can benefit from all of the SLAs and all the goodness that comes with that. So I think that's going to be a big thing. At least if I have a SOC team on the infrastructure side, they don't have to maintain that specifically in an on-premise environment.
Yeah. So I heard scalability, efficiency, speed, time to value, right? Being closer to the data sources, especially with the proliferation of cloud computing, SaaS technology, being closer to where the logs are actually generated is ultimately a more efficient.
And just to add this, right? Long time ago when I was adminning a SIEM, and this was back in the ArcSight days, we had situations where we were having logs that were rolling. So, you know, that happens on an on-prem situation. Yeah. If you don't get things done in a proper amount of time, somebody's got to go add more storage, right? And it's not easy.
Yeah. So maybe to pivot a little bit on some of the kind of anxiety around transitioning a SIEM from one platform to another, you know, security orchestration, automation, response is a capability that has percolated within security operations to allow for, you know, more automation, more of a proactive security posture versus a reactive security posture. So where does that fit into the modern SOC? And maybe Anthony, if you can hum a few bars on, you know, Palo Alto Networks' journey and you know what your attack surface looks like and how your SOC was, you know, fundamentally modernized and shifted into the new world, and kind of the balance between, you know, people and automation. So how did you guys do that?
So Palo Alto Networks, us as a company, you know, probably a few years ago, I think maybe it's like 5 or 6 years ago, we finally went all in onto our products. And as we went through the transition and we started moving, we were able to finally, you know, back to your point about automation, we were able to create all these mundane tasks and create playbooks that can actually automate those. So like at this given point, we have a 24/7 SOC that's 10 people. We've had 2 people, attrition has been 2 people over the last 5-6 years. So, I mean, we've been able to, and even the analysts, our analysts are more like level 3 analysts. All the level 1, level 2 things have actually been pretty much automated and been able to, anything that an analyst sees, it's high fidelity. They're not having to go to this other device or this other device. I got to enrich my incident. Everything's in with our stitching capabilities. By the time they look at it, I see the timeline of, hey, there was somebody at brute force right here. They got in right here. They were able to exfil right here. They are able to see the timeline up front. And now they're able to kind of react and be able to act. And as even going through an incident response procedure or plan with, you know, the SOC manager or even any type of executives, everything's already there for them to showcase, this is what's happened. And this is where we stopped it. And so everything's already there from that given standpoint. So I think that automation, back to your point, automation is very key. I think it helps make one employee like 3 employees, and you're able to bring down how long it takes to respond and how long it takes to close an incident significantly. I mean, we're having tickets come in and they're just automatically being done. But even as a human touch point, it might have taken like on average 15 to 30 minutes. Now it's taking 5 minutes, or it's taking a minute to get through these things now.
I think automation is not only key, but it's actually a necessity, right? I think that data now is just massively proliferating. We have so many more incremental data sources being added every single day into our SOCs right out there, right? And we're not going to be able to contend with that data at a fast enough pace. So what you eventually have is an inflection point, right? Where that data rapidly goes up, but your SOC team can't keep up with the pace of that data expanding. You need to have automations, you need to have additional efficiencies in place to be able to account for that data, to be able to reduce the number of alerts that come into your SOC, and then make informed decisions, you know, either through automation or bubbling up some of those key alerts to maybe manual intervention in some of those higher level SOC analysts.
And I would kind of overlay this as well, right? It's very important as you're going through this journey, like being able to create automation is having a plan, right? Having a partner that can actually sit and talk and say, hey, what's our mission? What's our end state goal? How do we get to the point where we can automate? What can we automate? There's some things you can't automate, right? I mean, there's things that morph to different things, and it's not always the same answer. So it's understanding what's that plan and being able to have a partner that can step you through, like Deloitte, that can step you through that journey to say, okay, this is how we get here. And then as you start enabling these different functionalities, just like we had when we started enabling different automations, now you start seeing the return on investment start exponentially growing, because now I'm starting to get that time back.
Yeah. So really good kind of insights on SOAR and automation. Can't have a conversation about cyber without AI, so we got to throw the AI buzzword out there.
Yeah.
So where do you see AI fitting into the modern SOC? Is it really just capability that can facilitate analysts as they're triaging and investigating alerts through the SIEM? Is it more than that? So what's, where does AI fit into the modern SOC, and what's Palo's approach for that as well?
All the above, but no, just playing. So,
Yeah, we are the AI.
so right now, and we just released this with 3.0, we have capabilities that we're enabling more from an AI perspective, where it's going to give you recommendations. It sees trends on different type of playbooks you run. So let's say Deloitte creates 10, 20 playbooks for a customer. As it sees trends, and it'll say, well, you know what? That Deloitte playbook that you created, that's the best for this situation for an analyst. And it's going to be able to call that out to the analyst. There are co-pilots that we have aligned with XSIAM as well. So even if it sees misconfiguration or it's seeing something that's not right, it's starting to bubble those things up now. I can now talk to the co-pilot and say, show me top 10 threat actors that we've seen. It's going to bubble that up from a language perspective. And even from a perspective, I can bring my own ML under the covers for XSIAM. So now if I do data classification a certain way that my organization only does it, I could align that under the covers with the ML functionality of XSIAM. So I've created an ultimate flexibility within XSIAM, right? So I think it is very important the way we see our company as an AI first company. And I still think it's the future and where we're headed.
Yeah, I think that to really have a next generation SOC, AI is going to be 100% within its DNA, right? Across every facet that Anthony has described here. I think a big key is enablement, right? Our practitioners are enabled by having AI make smart recommendations, whether it's a co-pilot, triaging alerts, the proliferation of alerts, like I mentioned, and basically helping across every single facet in that security workflow. So I think that's so important. That's one of the chief things I think I look for, in a next generation SOC platform, is that ability to be able to elevate my SOC practitioners and tell them, hey, you don't have to do some of this minutia that you were used to doing before. This is something that you can now leverage. AI is something that you can now leverage going forward in a much more efficient and sophisticated way.
Yeah. With regards to kind of the threat detection models that are native in the platform, a lot of clients don't like black box services. So does Palo Alto Networks kind of expose the models underneath the hood? And I think you mentioned it before, but can you just make the point whether or not, a client can build their own models and ingest them into the platform, or, us as a partner of Palo Alto Networks, we can create models and then ingest them into the platform. So how much visibility is there into the actual models that do the threat detection piece, and how are those models trained over time within the platform?
So we do showcase all the models that we are using. We won't go into like the IP of how. It's not going to go into a lot of the IP of how we're using them. We do showcase that, and then with your bring your own ML functionality that sits in XSIAM, we have a Jupyter Notebook IDE that sits in XSIAM where you can kind of overlay, where you can put in your ML into it, and so you build your own, right?
Yeah.
You can make XSIAM a Deloitte XSIAM. It would not exist anywhere else. It is Deloitte's version of XSIAM. So this is where the capabilities, where it gives it so much flexibility that it becomes its own entity of how you make it.
Yeah.
Right. I think, for XSIAM specifically, all the analytics of all the information, the alerts that come into the XSIAM platform, that's all publicly available.
Yep.
So it'll show you what are the IOCs, BIOCs, like lateral movement, for example, that's coming into the system. What are the different supported log sources? That's all readily available. So we can enhance with that bring your own ML, BYOML, to inform our own models that we bring in.
Yep.
So that's all readily available for us.
Okay, cool. So as far as a call to action, maybe, so in the conversations you've been having with your clients, what is the, top thing that they should consider? What is the kind of business value that you drive for having clients kind of get over the hump and embrace SOC modernization and take forward a new path on how they operate their security operations center?
So the one thing that I would always say, right, as you go through a transformation, it's a journey, right? It's not, and even from a SIEM perspective, XIAM is not a SIEM to SIEM takeout. I mean, we've consolidated almost 7 different attack surface management, automation. We got threat intel. All these things are consolidated into XIAM. So I think what you have to look at it is the journey that you're going to make on transforming your operations as it is today to, you know, this next level that's going to kind of secure your organization as a whole and be able to have that full visibility. I think that's the viewpoint that you have to see, and then making sure you have a trusted partner, right? Because it's not it's not, hey, I turn on the switch and everything works. It doesn't work that way anywhere, right? And I think having the right partner, like Deloitte, and being able to step forward down that transformation journey.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that, you know, with modernizing your SOC, there's 2 elements here. There's the business value proposition. That's looking at all your tools, how much the total cost of ownership of said tools are, and what it would do from that perspective to consolidate those tools into a single platform. So what does that look like? Are we saving money? Are we saving costs? Are we realizing certain efficiencies that we wouldn't get with point solutions? So that's number 1. Number 2 are the technical challenges. You know, as I mentioned, that it's hard to effectively go from multiple solutions into a single solution. There's people, there's processes, and the tool element as well that has to be sort of evaluated in that due diligence exercise. That's something that we do. That's something that Deloitte does very well. We do assessments that look at your SOC. We do these assessments and we look at what's your timeline to get into a next generation like SOC operation. So that's really what I would say, is that do your due diligence to understand really what the level of effort and what it's going to really take to get into that next gen platform.
Yeah, I would kind of just to reiterate something that Bipul said this morning in the rubric session. You know, one of the quotes I wrote down is cyber is about risk management. I think that translates into the Security Operations Center. I think there's a lot of risk around, you know, migrating from platform to platform, consolidating different technologies, you know, moving from one, dynamic that is, you know, highly manual, people-driven to something that is much more automated. And so we're obviously in the risk management business, and I think it's important upfront to have those really deep discussions on having a programmatic way in which an organization is going to adopt technologies, consolidate technologies, and move into the modern Security Operations Center. So I agree with all your points. Well, thank you all for your attention, and thank you guys for your
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you.